Thank you, Janet. Good morning. Just want to welcome those who are worshiping with us via internet and specifically Facebook at this worship service. And we want to share with you that we will be having communion a little bit later on. And if you would like to be a part of that, you can take some time to prepare yourself and be ready when we do that following the message. Also, I want to mention, if you have favorite hymns of yours, we are going to be working more hymns and music into this worship service. Doesn't have to be specifically a hymn. If you have a gospel song that is just meaningful to you, let us know and put that on one of the yellow communication cards and drop it in the offering plate. Just don't be filling that. I don't want to see you flipping through the hymnal during the sermon now. You can do it later. But let us know, and we'll be sure and work those in at appropriate times, because we'd love to have a little more participation with this worship service. Would you pray with me? Holy God, as we turn to your word and consider what you've given to me today to share, Lord, I pray you would speak through me, that your word might be heard. Give us good ears to listen, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen. So imagine you're in Jericho in the first century and you have a problem, a tax problem. Who do you call? Well, of course, you call the IRS, the Israeli Revenue Service. The call might have gone something like this. Hello, you've reached the telephone assistance center of the Israeli Revenue Service. My name is Zaccheaus. How may I help you? Yes, that's right, Zaccheaus. It means pure and innocent. I understand your laughter, ma'am. I really do. I've heard it all. So where are you calling from? Jericho, wonderful town, great place, lots of history, occupied by our ancestors when they moved into the promised land, you know. I live there too, by the way. Yes, ma'am, I am a Jew, just like you. No, I'm not a dirty, rotten Roman. Well, yeah, you're right, I work for the Romans, but I'm still a Jew. The Romans took Jericho about 90 years ago without much resistance, I might add, like what were we supposed to do against a powerful army in the world? They can pretty much come in and take anything they want. No, you're not listening. I'm not defending Rome. I'm reviewing history. General Mark Antony had an estate here, and he liked it so much he gave it to Cleopatra, and after the two of them committed suicide, what a mess that was. You know, Augustus gave it to the estate to Herod, and here we are. No, ma'am, I'm not a fan of Herod either. Remember, he was so jealous of his son-in-law, he murdered him at a pool right here in Jericho. Oh, yes, I can assist you with that. Good. I'm good with numbers, and so I can calculate your tax for you. When do you need this to be done? Maybe never, you say? What's that? Why? Oh, I see. You think that you shouldn't have to pay tax anymore because Jesus came. I've heard people calling him the Son of David. They hope he will leave the people in an army like some new King David and kick the Romans out. But ma'am, I got to be honest with you, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I've seen the strength of the Roman army and their brutality. Jesus in an army wouldn't stand a chance. Well, it could have gone something like that. You know the stories. Zaccheaus, this chief tax collector, equally hated and despised by both the Jews and the Romans. You know, the Romans hired him because he knew the people and he knew how to get out there and collect taxes, and they knew they could use him to collect the exorbitant taxes they had, these enormous taxes, but they despised the greed and the traitorous methods that Zaccheaus used. Now, the Jews had every reason to despise Zaccheaus because he would charge, and his tax collectors would charge more than was necessary, and they'd skim off the top. And if you didn't have the coin, why, they'd take whatever they wanted, including your favorite milk goat. And they'd leave you poorer than before. The Roman system was more than oppressive. It was an economic slavery in action. So Zach learns that Jesus is coming to town. We don't know what spurred his interest in Jesus. Perhaps it was the rumors of miracles that he had done, or perhaps it was the word of his incredible preaching. Some have said that people came because Jesus was just such a charismatic leader. I think it might have been a little of all three of those. Curiosity, just who is this guy? Why is he liked so well? Good old Zach couldn't have had very many friends. You see, nobody liked a tax collector, so if he had friends, he probably bought them with gifts, didn't he? And well, his family, well, you know how families are. He probably taxed them too. So he probably didn't have very many friends in his family. Maybe, perhaps, Zaccheaus thought he had seen Jesus healing the lepers and declaring sinners free of sin. Maybe he thought Jesus might like me. Maybe he could relate to Jesus. Now, when we get to the text, Jesus' greeting is very unusual because it comes in the form of a command. Zaccheaus, you get down out of that tree right now. Come down here. It's an odd greeting, which begs the question, how did Jesus even know Zaccheaus? Well, I think probably most everybody knew who Zaccheaus was. He was the chief tax collector, right? But Jesus is also God, so he already knows what's going on with us. But he says to Zaccheaus, I must stay at your house today. When was the last time someone came up to you and said, I must come to your house today and have dinner? Okay, let me go to the grocery store. Give me a few minutes to pick up my dirty clothes. But we read in the text, Zaccheaus welcomes him warmly. Come on over. Come on over. Maybe this is his answer to his heart's desire. Jesus is showing an interest in him, and nobody else is. So maybe he's kind of excited about, what could happen next? Meanwhile, what's the crowd's reaction? Well, in the Greek, it's accurate. It says they murmured. You can imagine that, huh? Can you believe what he's doing? He's going to this tax collector's house. What's wrong with Jesus? He's going to the enemy. He's got to be out of his mind. They can't believe it. Jesus is their hero, the healer, the perceived leader of a resistance movement against the Romans. And he's going to the enemy's house for dinner. Yeah, they just shook their head about that one. And the next part of the story, after Zaccheaus goes to dinner, he goes out and he starts giving money back to people that he took from them. And he even declares, if I cheated somebody, I'll give them 4 times the amount. Gives you a sense of how much money Zaccheaus was worth. Something changed in Zaccheaus when he had dinner with Jesus. Can you imagine what the people were saying? Who took Zaccheaus? And who is that guy? what did Jesus do to him? Think you might be a little nervous about inviting Jesus over to your house after that? What's he going to do to me? What's he going to want me to do? Was Zaccheaus worthy of salvation? That's the bottom question. Was Zaccheaus worthy? Pastor Ross spoke last week about our worthiness, and we learned that yes, we are worthy because of Christ's work on the cross and because of God's great love for us. So then, even despised Zacchaeus, this tax collector for the Romans, was worthy. But this is far more than just the children's story that we tell. We Christians have been placing worthiness restrictions on people for a very long time. First, the restriction was on, the uncircumcised. They weren't worthy. But it wasn't very many years before the tables had turned and suddenly the Jews weren't worthy. Well, then time goes on and blacks aren't worthy and Native Americans aren't worthy and non-Catholics aren't worthy and non-Protestants aren't worthy and non-Baptist and non-Methodist, and pretty soon we're putting restrictions on everybody, and convicted felons and gay folk, and the list goes on and on. When we speak of the worthiness of an individual, it's this worthiness of our humanity to be redeemed by God, to be freed from the sin that we are in. Oh, we still got to deal with our personal and public sin, don't we? Because we're not perfect yet. And we're working toward that in our life of discipleship. But we still sin. We need to come back to Christ for forgiveness. Even though our salvation is secured, we still mess up. In God's eyes, we're perfect, but yet we still fail. And so we continue to follow Jesus to grow in our faith. I've been following the latest Christian buzz. Kanye West has become a Christian. Y'all know Kanye, don't you? Yeah. Kanye West is a Christian? What's with that? Holy smoke. It's fascinating to watch people trying to figure out if this is real or not. Is he just capitalizing on this, or is it real? Has something changed in him? Understandable, this renowned rap and industrial punk artist is not known for his moral behavior and his songs of great moral teaching, after all. Is he worthy of redemption? And if he is, then how do we interact with him? I was on a plane ride from Portland to Phoenix. No, I didn't sit next to Kanye West. I was in the middle seat, and then Ron was on the window seat. I was bringing Ron back to face trial for a grisly stabbing murder in Flagstaff. Ron had a lengthy history of crimes in California and aliases as long as your arm. I believed he was a predator. I'm pretty certain that he committed another murder in Utah, and that the car and the body are at the bottom of Lake Powell. But they've never been found. They're covered with silt, I'm sure. But on that flight late at night, I didn't think a whole lot of Ron sitting next to me. About halfway through the flight, Ron picks up his Bible, the only thing he brought with him from Portland, and he began to read it. After a while, we began to talk about the Bible and about salvation. And Ron told me his story. He said while he was on the run, see, I'd been chasing Ron for 18 months. And I chased him from Flagstaff to Kingman to down to Phoenix and Cave Creek and Las Vegas, and then we lost him for a while, and I knew he was in Northern California somewhere. And while he was on the run, he stayed with a relative who gave him this Bible and then led him to Christ. And that's what led Ron to turn himself in to the Multnomah County Sheriff's Department. I was skeptical of Ron. I'm a bit skeptical of Kanye, but at least in Kanye's case, there's time and media interest that we may be able to see the fruit of his discipleship. You see, if we've been truly saved and we are a disciple, there's going to be fruit, isn't there? There's going to be some evidence of a change, just like Zaccheaus. I think there's already been some positive things that have come out from what Kanye is doing. He's holding Sunday worship at his home. Time magazine reported that, Time magazine, can you believe this? Time is reporting that Dr. Ricky Dillard, a Grammy-nominated gospel singer who's been to one of these worship settings, and this is what he said. He said that if Kanye's worship was Kanye-centric, that is, about himself, you could feel it. If you're a Christian, you know when somebody's faking it. But he said this, if you know God and you go to one of Kanye's worship experiences, you will experience God because you know God. So yeah, it seems that there is some real fruit coming out of what he's doing. And just think about it. Kanye's going to be able to reach people you and I aren't going to reach. Amen? And the kingdom's pretty darn big. God wants everybody. So Zaccheaus was transformed, and the evidence is in his repentant acts, what he did after he had this conversation with Jesus, this encounter. So next time you find yourself questioning the worthiness of someone else, stop and ask yourself, think about how worthy you would be without the grace of Jesus Christ, without the cross. How worthy would you be? How has that grace changed you? Now, maybe it's been a lifelong change. Some of us have been blessed to be in the church most of our lives, if not all of it. And so the changes are lifelong. They're a little bit at a time. But some of you have had dramatic changes, maybe like Kanye, maybe like Ron. And it's much, much more radical and specific. Let me ask you this. How are you welcoming Jesus? Is it direct like Zach's, warmly welcomed? Or are you still keeping Jesus a little bit at arm's length because you're afraid of what he's going to ask you to do? You're a little afraid of what he's going to challenge you to do in your life. Let me tell you, and this is from experience, Jesus is never going to ask you to do something that isn't good. He's never going to ask you to do something that won't bring great blessing to you and to the kingdom, because that's God's nature. How about the saints in your life? Those who have gone before you, how did they teach you about Jesus? And finally, who are you teaching about Jesus and his great love? Would you pray with me? Holy God, thank you for the account of Zaccheaus. We so often take some of those stories, we turn them into children's stories, and as adults we never go back to read them or pay attention to them. But Lord, clearly there's lessons for all of us. It's so easy for us to, and we've been taught in our culture, in our lives, that other people aren't as worthy as we are. But in your eyes, in the eyes of Christ, everybody's worthy to come to you. And you stand there and invite us to come out of our highfalutin tree where we think we're above everybody else, and to come down and humble ourselves before you, and you change our lives. Lord, for those here today whose lives have been changed because of Jesus, we give thanks, we praise you, we love you. Keep your work up in them. Keep working on us in our sin and our denial, and draw us closer to you, more holy each day. But Lord, if there's one here today who's holding you at arm's length, still thinking, I'm not worthy yet. There's one listening to us, watching this on the internet today that's thinking, I'm not worthy. I hear it, but I'm not worthy. We've been taught that our whole lives. In some cases, that recording is going off. Turn off the recording and hear Jesus say to you, come down out of the tree and take me home with you. If you're holding up at arm's length, he's inviting you to take you home into your heart, into your life, into every corner of every space of your life. Don't miss what Jesus is offering you. Lord, if you're speaking to one today that is ready now and is saying yes to you and welcoming you warmly, then Lord, we give praise and thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord, for the work you're doing. In Jesus' name, amen.